Talk to you about resilience. Joshua? Oh, yeah.
Okay, good morning. There's a lot of people that were golfing that weren't here for the money this morning. I don't golf well, and I don't golf well sober, especially. So my name's Josh Bitsko. I'm a retired police captain out of Las Vegas, and I retired about a year and a half ago. And since then, I've been going around the country teaching about police resiliency and critical incident mindset. And it is a topic that's near and dear to me, honestly, because throughout my career, I paid no attention to at least the resiliency part of things. I guess the question is, why am I here? Why am I in front of you? Well, in a very short period of time, I was the tactical response to the largest mass shooting in U.S. history, the 1 October event. I was involved in an officer-involved shooting. I lost a brother to suicide. I lost a dad to cancer, went through a divorce. And then right before I retired, I was the incident commander at an active shooter at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And most of those things I did not handle well. Throughout my career, it was the old adage of we just kind of shove things down, we don't feel. And why that's dangerous in our profession, in our industry, is because it works for a while. And so realizing the mistakes that I made throughout my career, I knew that there was a gap in a couple of things in how we teach police officers. And so I worked with some police researchers and doctors to not only identify, we all know the problem, and so I'm not going to stand up and talk excessively about cumulative trauma or acute trauma. I'll mention it to give some context of some of the things that I'm talking about. But that's always been my biggest issue with most of the classes like this, is they're great at identifying the problem. I've taken police suicide classes, which are 3 days long. 2.5 are all about identifying the problem, why it's an issue, statistics, and all of that. But they never really get into, okay, well, how do we fix it? So I worked with some of the top police researchers in the country, some of the top police psychologists in the country, to come up with a couple of ways that we can better prepare our cops and our leaders, which is why I'm here in front of you guys today, to help themselves and help their workforces. The other big part of this is, so we all have the same training. Around the country, since Columbine, especially when it comes to active shooters, we have the same training on how to handle critical incidents. I mean, it's similar, maybe different terminology, but I guarantee I could grab 4 of you, we could move through this hotel as if it's an active shooter and get through tactically. Because as I said, since Columbine, we've all had the same type of training. With that being said, why do we still have failures? Why do we still have a Uvalde where you have a school police chief that fails to act, that freezes? Well, we may have the same tactics. We know the what to do. But at times, we don't prepare our cops for the how to do it, for the mental mindset to prepare. And I love a lot of what Dr. Gil Martin talks about the warrior mindset. I wanted to delve into that a little more and give specific tools on, okay, I want to have the warrior mindset, but how do I do that? How do I override these difficult but natural emotions that we have? And we're going to get into that. So I did 24 years with the police department in Las Vegas, retired as a captain. I had a variety of different jobs. I was the captain of the Las Vegas Strip. I was asked to create a wellness bureau, which I'll talk about, but most of my time was spent in K-9. I did a couple stints in the detective bureau as a child abuse detective. Terrible job, don't do it if you can avoid it. And I also did a couple years in internal affairs. I was told to go there, I did not ask to go there. Sorry, my clicker is, I think I have to be on this side of the stage for the clicker to work. So, but again, what I was talking about is we don't really have a specific tool for mindset when it comes to dealing with critical incidents, both before, during, and after. So one of the things that we came up with at my company is the COPE model. So every critical incident we go on is going to have follow a similar flow. It maybe look different. It could be a single person barricade all the way up to an active shooter, but our internal processes are going to be similar, sometimes more extreme, sometimes less, depending on a variety of incidents or a variety of factors. What could be going on, our own experience. But one of the things is the COPE model, which provides first responders with the knowledge and skills needed to recognize and overcome natural but harmful human reactions in each stage of a critical incident response. And why do I say that? Why do I say natural but harmful? Well, regardless of your belief system, we were either created or evolved to have emotions for a reason. Like we have fear and anxiety. They are ingrained into us for a reason. If I'm out hunting and I see a bear, I'm going to run, right? Or I'm going to have a physiological reaction to that. And why is that? Because we are built for self-preservation. Well, what we ask our first responders to do, our cops to do, is see that bear and run towards it. But at times we don't prepare them for how to do that. How do I then override the physiological effects of fear or anxiety or tactical paralysis, anger? These emotions that we have, for me, I mean, I did 24 years. My father did 30 years before me, and you just didn't talk about those things. You know, in a lot of the mental health classes that we take, we always talk about stigma. There's a stigma in law enforcement for getting mental health help. I do agree with that to a point that, you know, we have put obstacles in front of ourselves for years when it comes to getting mental health help. Like, I'm afraid that if I reach out for help, I could lose my livelihood, job. You know, nowadays you may not, probably not going to lose your job at most agencies if you come forward and have been diagnosed with PTSD or feeling suicidal or any of those things. But it still can have an impact on your career trajectory. For us on our agency, people would step forward and they would get help, but then they can no longer work the overtime. And the one good thing in Las Vegas, because we are the largest party planners in the world, is there's a lot of overtime. We don't have enough officers to fill the special events overtime that the casinos and events. We have professional sports teams. We have the Golden Knights. I do nothing about hockey. I still really don't. We got a NFL team. It had to be the Raiders of all the teams. What's the team here? Are you guys Chiefs fans, or is it regionally? Bengals? We found the one. We found the guy. We all got to keep an eye on him. Watch your drink around that guy. But so we're getting these professional sports teams, and we need more officers to cover it. We are tapping into even the school police and all the different agencies around us just to fill them at Las Vegas Metro. But when a person is put on some sort of crisis leave, they can no longer work that overtime. So yes, is there a stigma? Yes. Are we finally having the right conversations where people are more likely to come forward? Absolutely. I think sometimes when we focus on the stigma now, we're stopping our own forward progress when it comes to that. There is, however, a stigma about talking about being afraid, right? Because you put a badge and a gun, you raise your hand in front of your friends and family, and you swear to protect the community, the Constitution, and your partners. You're no longer afraid, right? That's the expectation. And it's just not true. And so one of my goals was to find ways to prepare our cops around the country to deal with those difficult emotions and mitigate the physiological effects to dissipate the fog of war so we can make better decisions under pressure, better decisions under stress. And you don't have to be the one in front of the door to have that anxiety and that fear. And I'm going to talk about the difference between those two because, again, I've had the unfortunate experience of being the tactical response to a mass shooting and then also the incident commander, which I know a lot of people sitting in this room might have to have that experience or have had that experience already. So the COPE model, because listen, we're cops, we love acronyms, we love cool symbols and bad shapes, so I had to come up with that. It was either that or call it tactical emotions, and I went with this. But chaos. Every critical incident has an amount of chaos. That's what really causes that fog of war. That's what causes those intense emotions. That's what causes us to freeze up. And that's that uncertainty or that mayhem. And I'm going to break down each one of these more. This is kind of the flow the class is going to follow. That feeling of being overwhelmed, right? You know, when we think about fear, when we think about, oh, somebody's afraid, we think about running away, but that's not most likely what happens with law enforcement. It's that freeze, and I've seen it. And I'm going to be real because I'm retired, so I can talk real about some of the incidents I've been on. We had failures at 1 October. We had cops that froze. You know, you look at like the media and the overall, after action reports, and our response as an agency was good, but we often still don't talk about, we had over 1,000 cops that responded to that. Percentage-wise, you're going to have some that just weren't cut out for that. So we had people freeze, which is way more dangerous than running away. Then after that, it's that protection of self. We're trying to protect our own identity, and that's where we get stuck in this loop of replaying and rethinking and rationalizing everything that happened. We're not processing through it. We're not dealing with what we experienced. And then ultimately what I talked about at the beginning, that evasion, that pushing those emotions down. So how do we respond to that? Well, through chaos, there's calm, and I'm going to give tactics to calm that chaos in the moment, both internally and externally around us. When we're feeling overwhelmed, we override those emotions, because that's what we have to do in those moments. We have to set those emotions aside because they don't serve us to do the job that we all swore that we were going to do. Processing through those emotions so we don't get stuck in that protection of self phase. Because, here's the spoiler: you can't heal trauma, you can't get rid of trauma, you can only process through it. You can only become stronger and evolve, become more resilient. So I hate the term wellness. And I was the the director of wellness for Las Vegas Metro. I was on executive staff, and that was my title. You stand in front of a room full of cops and start talking about wellness, you're going to be met with rolled eyes, because it is overplayed. Every company, it doesn't matter if it's Axon, which is an amazing company for police departments, but Axon or all these large, Cortico, apps, programming, they're all focusing on wellness. They're trying to sell wellness. And the issue with that is it's overused, and wellness really doesn't mean anything. It's not measured. It is too vague for cops to apply it to their daily life. I focus on resilience. Resilience is measurable. Resilience is building strength. I get into this later in the class, is what is the definition of resilience? There are national level studies on building resilience, starting in the military, now moving to first responders. So resilience is building the strength so you can manage the traumas of this job that we are asked to do. No longer do we rub dirt on it. No longer do we shake it off, not talk about it, drink the problems away. All things that I've tried, and they didn't work. They work for a short time. That's why it's dangerous. But before we get into it, I'd like to give context. So I'm going to go through a real down and dirty debrief of the 1 October shooting in Las Vegas. If you've been to some of the presentations, I know if you've been to the National Academy, sometimes they have people from Metro go there. I traveled the country for a couple of years right after the incident and gave tactical debriefs. So I'm going to go through parts of that to kind of give context to the incident, and also some tactical takeaways, because a tactical debrief is how we learn. We either learn through our own experience or through others' shared experiences, but mine's a little different, where I talk about not only what happened, but I talk about my role in it, and I talk about how I felt during it. And there are times, I've done this now hundreds of times, so there are still times that I might get emotional. I'm doing a lot better with that, so just bear with me if you hear the emotion in my voice. But active shooter incidents, this is a thing that is going to continue to plague society until everybody in this room is retired and your replacements are retired, because we just don't have a solve to stop it from happening. I was just over in Europe, and like Scotland and the UK, they're now looking to register machetes because it works so well to stop active shooters. They're trying to stop machete attacks, so they're looking to register machetes. And they had, the amnesty bins for machetes, which I saw that and I just started laughing. But so these are FBI statistics. Do I have any feds in here? Good. But so take it with a grain of salt. But there were 61 active shooter incidents in 2021. That's almost a 97% increase from 2017. And I use those numbers because 2017 was the year of the 1 October attack. And I use the term active shooter intentionally because, again, words matter. If you're watching the media, especially the national level media, I talk about them a little bit in here. They're not your friend. They have their own spin. They have their own agendas when it comes to reporting on these, and I'll give some tips for for especially heads of agencies that have to deal with the national media when something big happens, and I'm sure some of you in here already have. If you watch the national media, they say mass shootings, and a mass shooting is 3 or more people shot, which there's like 40 in Chicago every weekend. So those statistics are skewed. An active shooter is somebody actively going through a crowded place, killing people randomly until one of 3 things happens. They're killed by police, they self-terminate, or they give up. All of those things are precipitated by a police response or a citizen with a gun. I mean, there's been a couple recently where, some very brave citizens stepped up. That's why us being able to respond efficiently, respond quickly, and respond bravely is so important, because our quick response alone can save lives. So that freeze, that's why I say that freeze is so dangerous. And some of the notable incidents, and I could update this weekly, to be honest with you, but the 1 October we're going to talk about Pulse nightclub, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Uvalde, Nashville. Nashville seems to have a lot of them. I visited their wellness bureau. They do a great job. They're years ahead of most agencies when it comes to wellness. And the only reason for that is one of the things I learned in building a wellness bureau is you can build the best facilities, you can have the best resources, you can put everything together light years ahead of most agencies. Culture takes time to change. And what I learned in talking to people that have had wellness bureaus for years, they say plan on 10 years before you see real change in that culture. So you are changing the direction of a cruise ship. You're not a speedboat when it comes to that. So that's why consistency is so important. So after this incident in Las Vegas, we put together a video that kind of covered what happened, had body camera, had different, trying to give an idea, put the viewer in the place of that. This isn't that video. The New York Times did a much better job putting it together. They have the resources, they have they can run, these national level medias can run their own concurrent investigations. So when you're watching this video, for those that don't know what the incident was, it was a 3-day country concert in Las Vegas. It is the overtime that every cop wants to work. It's a country concert, people coming up shaking your hands. The most issues you have to deal with are maybe a couple drunk cowboys getting in a fight, which I'm sure you guys don't have to deal with here very often. That's a joke. It's early. And I'm a little jet lagged. I flew in from Vegas last night. But really, people coming up and thanking you for being there, offering you water, flirting with a couple cowgirls, whatever it is, it's the easy overtime until it wasn't. And when the armed subject from the Mandalay Bay, 32 floors high, across the street, so directly to the west of the concert grounds, broke out 2 windows, had 2 rooms rented out, and he had 23 guns affixed with bump stocks. If you don't know what a bump stock is, it's a stock that replaces the stock on a semi-automatic firearm. It's spring-loaded, so every time you hold down the trigger, the gun itself bounces, replicating fully automatic fire. And he fired over 1,000 rounds for 12 minutes into the crowd, killing 58 that night. 2 have since died from their injuries, so total 60 people died from the incident, 413 people shot, and over 800 injuries from trample and whatnot, just the chaos that happened. So when you're watching this, I want you to, whatever your role is, focus on the chaos. Maybe you would be an incident commander driving from home. Maybe you're a shift supervisor. And I know, like I said, a lot of these conferences, sometimes they send lieutenants or captains or whatever. Heck, you're an officer working down in the field, and then all of a sudden you're in fully automatic gunfire. Focus on the chaos. That's how you're going to get the most value from something like this, to put yourself to what it would actually feel like. And I've driven to active shooters that were going on and felt that internal anxiety, even though as a captain I knew I wasn't going to be the one going through a door. So try and put yourselves in the place of whatever your role would be when you're watching this video.
The mass shooting in Las Vegas unfolded on a scale that has confounded the public, and investigators too. The amateur and police footage of that night is horrifying, but by forensically analysing these clips, we are able to draw perhaps the most complete picture to date of what happened. We lined up the sound of gunfire in different videos, and using the hour, minute and second these clips were recorded, we mapped over 30 videos on a timeline covering the entire event. More evidence will emerge, and this is not the definitive picture, but this reconstruction puts you, the viewer, at the concert. We show what it must have felt like to be caught in a rampage, not knowing where to run or when the next round of bullets would come. And our wide-ranging investigation reveals what unfolded minute by chaotic minute. The gunman's 12 bursts into the festival crowd, his targeting of police, and the lulls in his shooting that allowed concert-goers a chance to flee.
Like, why are there people laying on the ground? Why are there people laying on the ground?
It's 10 p.m. and more than 20,000 people are watching country singer Jason Aldean at the Route 91 Harvest Festival. Across the street, the gunman Stephen Paddock is in a corner suite on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Hotel. He planned his attack meticulously. He had assembled an arsenal, bolted an exit door shut, installed surveillance cameras in the hallway, and calculated his elevation and distance from the crowd. A few minutes into the show, Paddock fires what appear to be single rounds from his hotel room. Video timestamps reveal that this happened after 10:05. Why doesn't Paddock fire more rounds at first? There are at least two theories. He's checking that the range and trajectory of his gunshots match the calculations he made, or he's firing at fuel tanks in the nearby airport. Whatever the reason, an uneasiness fills the crowd and people move toward the exit. 30 seconds later, we hear what sounds like automatic gunfire. It's the first of 12 bursts Paddock fired at the festival. More people begin to leave at the rear, and lights are turned on. Around the time of this first burst, Security Officer Jesus Campos is looking into a separate incident when he happens to come across the door Paddock had sealed shut. Paddock appears to be alerted to Campos as he is leaving and fires through the hotel door, wounding Campos in the leg. Campos takes cover in a doorway and calls in the shooting on his radio. The police and armed security officers begin to respond from within the hotel. 36 seconds after the first burst, Paddock fires a second one into the crowd. The cracking sound you hear are bullets passing nearby. The intensity suggests Paddock was aiming very near this area by the front of stage, the densest part of the crowd. There is a short interval here of 17 seconds. People begin to flee again. But then a third burst of fire opens up. The changing pitch of the cracks suggests Paddock is spraying the bullets around the area. A fourth burst hits the crowd just 20 seconds later. By our count, Paddock has now fired over 300 rounds in less than 2 minutes. The scenes that unfold at this point are distressing.
I'm not wasting that $20 beer. I'm pretty sure he's
there
from
are
Missouri.
multiple injuries
Just
stage
saying.
left, and people begin to treat the wounded around them. At this point, there's a break in the shooting of almost 1 minute and 50 seconds. We don't know what Paddock is doing during this interval. It's possible he fired down the hallway again. We have reporting that by now, Campos has been joined by hotel engineer Stephen Shook, who reports gunfire on his hotel radio.
It's at the end of the hallway. I can't tell you what room. He looked like he fired down the hallway when I got close to the door.
Whatever the reason, this break in the shooting allowed many people to move to safety. At 10:08, a police car arrives along Las Vegas Boulevard. A minute later, police officers are moving along a wall in the direction of Mandalay Bay to get eyes on the shooter. They direct fleeing concertgoers back into the venue and away from gunfire.
Hey, you guys, get down! Go that way! Get out of here, there's gunshots coming from over there!
Then Paddock fires a fifth burst. It's around 22 bullets in 3 short volleys. We hear this same burst from a different angle, at the Mandalay, where cab driver Corey Langdon was filming. Here's what it sounds like up close. Our reporting suggests that Paddock was positioned directly above the camera at this point. Then, just 40 seconds later, you can hear very dull and hollow gunfire.
Now it sounds like it's coming from farther away.
These rounds were not picked up by cameras recording in the festival at this time. That, plus our additional analysis, suggests this is Paddock firing indoors again, possibly toward Campus and Shook, who are still in the hallway. This lull in shooting outside lasted just over a minute and allowed more people to flee. But then, a sixth burst of fire. "20 seconds later, in a seventh burst, Paddock appears to take aim at the police.
Go that way. Hey, they're shooting right at us, guys. Everybody stay down.
Just 20 feet away, more police are taking cover behind a patrol car. They take direct fire and call it in over the radio.
So if you're there in that officer spot, Mandalay Bay northbound, right outside Route 91 at the south end.
It's now been over 6 minutes since the shooting began, and the area at stage right is mostly empty. But people are still taking cover at stage left when Paddock fires an eighth burst.
Should we get up? Should we get up?
'Dog. Get down. Get down, man. Mike.
How do we get out? Who has a gun?
Meanwhile, at the Mandalay, Paddock fires a ninth burst of fire right over a line of cabs and into the crowd. Taxi driver Corey Langdon still sees no signs of panic.
Where are the cops at? I'm right here by the porch at Mandalay Bay, and everything just seems to be normal here.
And hotel guests are still by the lobby.
You guys, there's a shots fired.
But actually, police were there. Up in the hotel, 2 officers are closing in on the gunman.
I'm inside the Mandalay Bay on the 31st floor. I can hear the automatic fire coming from one floor ahead, one floor above us.
And even as police are responding both inside and outside the hotel, Paddock unleashes his 10th burst of fire. More police cars approach along Las Vegas Boulevard.
Control, we need all units stop coming northbound on Las Vegas Boulevard because he's shooting this way. It's a horrible cover spot.
Further along, people are fleeing through the rear between bursts.
Keep your head down, run this way.
Nearly a minute and 10 seconds pass before his 11th assault. By now, Paddock is no longer firing in long, steady bursts.
Keep your head down, run that way.
We don't know why, but he may be struggling with a sluggish weapon or using a different gun. He fires his 12th and final burst as Corey Langdon leaves the Mandalay. It's less than 50 rounds. The rate of fire slows, and at 5 seconds it's the shortest of his bursts.
All the taxi drivers are gone now.
It's 10:17 and concertgoers are still fleeing at the far side of the venue.
Is there somebody out there?
Head down. Head down. You know what's happening.
Sure, all right.
Put this over your head.
Go, okay.
12 minutes after the first bullet was fired, police close in on the gunman on the 32nd floor.
Control 590K, I have a team of 4. We're going to make entry to the shark. We need to make a contact to the suspect. See if we can get up to him.
169, we're doing that right now. 32nd floor.
Copy. We're going to make our way to give you support.
By now, Paddock is no longer firing on the crowd and police continue to move closer to his room.
Control 294, I'm in the stairwell on the 32nd floor.
They evacuate guests.
Control 159, we're doing evacuations as we're working our way down the hallway. We're about 1:30.
I'm going to sit on the suspect's door. I need everybody in that hallway to be aware of it and get back. We need to pop this and see if we get any type of response from this guy to see if he's in here or if he's actually moved out somewhere else. Breach.
We are clearing this room. We have one suspect.
The police find 23 guns and hundreds of rounds of ammunition inside Paddock's suite. By our count, he fired close to 900 rounds at the festival. The police say he fired another 200 into the hallway. Paddock was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot. The 64-year-old killed at least 58 people, and over 500 were wounded. It was one of the deadliest shootings in modern American history.
So an interesting thing about this event is it was in our community. I mean, yes, there were a lot of tourists there. It's Las Vegas, but we had an off-duty officer that was at the concert when the shooting started. He was helping people get out, ended up getting shot and killed. The officer shot on the radio that you heard was his first day on the streets out of the academy, and he got shot in the arm responding to it. I go present still and have people come up to me that, well, I was actually at the concert. I just co-presented with a sheriff out of North Carolina for something different, and he's like, well, my mom was at that concert. I had one guy tell me he was at one of these. I was actually in Vegas for a bachelor party. We were supposed to go to the concert. We had tickets, but the groom-to-be decided he wanted to go to a strip club instead. So he said a strip club saved my life. But no matter what happened, I still hear stories because of the magnitude of it. That's just things that I didn't know about the event. And I've lived it. I presented it. I was involved in the investigation afterwards. Like, I was very intimately involved, and because of the magnitude, there are still things that I hear that I didn't know. But the suspect, Stephen Paddock, was a 64-year-old white male adult, retired, was an auditor by trade. Of course he was. But he also was very wealthy, a millionaire, had made a lot of investments, real estate investments, and he was a high roller. So he had gambled, he would go to the places, like in fact his rooms were comped at the Mandalay Bay that night. But he would go and gamble $40,000, $50,000 a day. And there was never a motive found. There were no notes. The only piece of paper we found in the room is next to where he was shooting. He had like bullets and bullet drop and windage and all of that calculations written down next to him. So again, an interesting thing about it is they wanted to find a motive, and a couple years ago actually they found letters that hit the news again talking about he was unhappy with how high rollers were being treated. However, right before he did the shooting, he paid off over $100,000 in markers to the Mandalay Bay that he owed for gambling. So it just doesn't fly. He did not commit a single crime until he broke out the windows and began shooting. All of the guns that he had were legal. He had spent several days bringing guns up to the room because he was a high roller. He had a porter helping him. He was allowed to use a service elevator. He put the do not disturb sign on the room door. So he had 2 weeks to set the room up how he wanted because housekeeping wouldn't go in. A lot of things have changed because of this. The policies on the Strip, most casinos, hotels, even hotels nationally, you can't not have somebody in your room, more than 3 days. So a housekeeper or someone like that will have to come be in the room to get eyes on it. He had done plenty of research on, again, alternative venues, Lollapalooza. He had the means to do this anywhere in the country. He had researched LVMPD SWAT tactics, other active shooter incidents around the country. He had set the room up. A couple interesting things is he had a blue pool hose with a fan on one end and like a scuba mask on the other, or like a snorkel mask on the other. Don't know why, other than he was expecting us to gas him out, or shooting that many rounds in an enclosed space made it difficult to breathe. We don't know. He had his own ventilation system set up. He had pre-loaded Surefire 40-round magazines in bags sat next to the windows, so he could just drop a mag and throw a new one in. Like dozens and dozens and dozens of preloaded mags. And he also had 23 guns. Why did he have that many guns? Well, bump stocks are notorious for double feeds. Semi-automatic rifles are not meant for fully automatic rifle fire, so the barrels will warp, the actions will gum up. And he knew this because he had collected guns for a long time, went out into the desert and shot plenty of times, so he knew what he was doing. Another thing he had done is something that really didn't hit the news at all, is he had next to the door drilled a port, or was unable to complete it, thank goodness, but was trying to port next to his door so he could see down the hallway, and he had a scoped AR-10 308 rifle on a bipod next to where he was trying to port that door. So we as responders are very lucky he did not do that, because there were several officers at the end of the hallway. If you think about the hotels in Las Vegas around that time, you have a center elevator area, then you have 3 wings going off of it, about 300 yards each. On each side of the hallway, there's rooms, and at the end, there's double doors. It's the suite, and that's the room he was in. So he had 135, which was the suite. Directly next to it, he had the adjoining room, 134. So picture that fatal funnel, having to traverse that entire hallway where he shot through the door 100 times to get to his door to make entry. And I'll explain when I get into my story how we navigated that. He also had a room service cart in front of the door with cameras affixed to it, so he could see our approach. To the left of his door at the end of the hallway was a fire escape stairwell. He had taken an L bracket and screwed that door shut to funnel us down the hallway. Because, again, he had done all of this planning to not only hinder our response, but to buy him more time to create more chaos and kill more people. Again, this is why decision-making in the moment is so important, because this suspect planned this extensively for years, and we have to, like that, make the decision to react to his planning. And, you know, there's now, you can watch 1 million hours of police response on YouTube now. Our bad guys know what we're doing. And so we have to be ready, because what's next? 2 October isn't going to look like this. I can get on Amazon and buy a drone that can drop a payload for $400. I'm not saying that's what it's going to be, but our bad guys are creative. And somebody is planning something right now that could kill a lot of people. So we have to be able to think clearly and respond as best as we can without letting those hard emotions create that fog of war, which is a big reason why I teach this class. Here's some pictures you can see in the top left hand. That's him and the porter taking the bags up. The top right is that L bracket that we pried off to make entry, and I'll talk about how we navigated that and got to his room in a bit. Bottom left is the interior of the room. You can see the guns. You see that blue pool hose I was talking about, and then the 2 windows that he broke out. So it is because we couldn't talk to him, we don't know for sure, but it's my belief that he was trying to cause as much chaos as possible. He had purchased tracer rounds for a .308 and was shooting. So right next to the concert grounds was the Harry Reid International Airport. Then it went by McCarran International Airport. They changed the name. And there were giant jet fuel tanks that he was shooting with that .308, trying to ignite them. And he was unsuccessful. But we had to drain those to get the rounds out of it, because he did hit them. It just didn't ignite. In his car that we eventually found in the Luxor parking garage had tannerite in it. So tannerite is used for explosive targets. Don't know what he was planning to do with that. Whether he was going to try and pre-stage it at the concert grounds and chickened out. I don't know why he had that in his car. But again, it's my belief that he wanted to cause as much chaos as possible. And chaos, that's every critical incident. It doesn't matter if it's a single person barricade all the way up to active shooter. That chaos is going to be present, both internally and externally. Whether it's the chaos of just setting up containment, somebody firing pop shots out of a house at officers, or again, something like this, of this nature. Anytime you have a large crowd and anything happens, there's going to be chaos. Especially now because of social media, and it's that instant knowledge, people showing up, and I'll talk about that in a bit as well. But the crowd reaction. So you kind of saw there's that hesitation, right? It's what I'm hearing actually happening. A lot of people thought there were fireworks at first. You even see the first couple rounds go off, and Jason Aldean's still playing. When he ran off the stage, his mic was still open. So when rounds started going, there was also gunfire coming from the speakers at the front of the stage. It took several minutes, even for us as responders, to know where the shooting was actually coming from. You know, if it can happen, it will happen. Somebody gets on the radio, an officer gets on the radio and says, there are rounds coming, or the shooting's coming from the Mandalay Bay pretty early. Another officer gets on, no, it's strobe lights, I could see it through my binoculars. Both of those things were true. A couple floors below, there was somebody that had, like they were at a party or whatever they're doing in a room in Vegas, they had strobe lights. And so again, that confusion, that chaos, trying to even get our arms around what's happening. And what do people do when there's an active shooter? When there's a shooting, they hit the deck. Well, this wasn't an active shooter like most of us have trained for, walking through a crowd shooting people, where hitting the deck might make you a smaller target. This was basically a barricaded, elevated sniper. So when you hit the deck, you're now immobile and a bigger target. What did the concert do? When the shooting started, they hit the lights, turned the lights on. So then our suspect had clear vision of the field. Our officers, when they work special events overtime, wear bright green high-vis vests so people can see them and know that they're officers. So the quick-thinking officers dropped those when the shooting started. But that you had, even from that far away, you could identify which ones were officers because the vests they were wearing. There was very little cover. I went out up to the room. They took those of us that breached the door like 2 weeks after, and they were kind of MGM owns Mandalay Bay. MGM and the investigators were kind of walking us through some things. I don't remember anything from that other than standing in front of the window, looking down at the crowd and realizing there was nowhere for anybody to go. There were some bleachers set up. There was a couple outbuildings, but really there was no cover. It was, for lack of a better term, and I hate saying this, but fish in a barrel. And then evacuation. We've all taken those ICS 100 through 400, maybe you've gone up to 700, and they talk about, okay, do you need to set up an evacuation area, bring in some transit buses and get people out? Everybody basically self-evacuated. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, yes, the first responders, most of them did a great job. The medical, the doctors, the nurses, the fire department, the police officers. There's so many stories of bravery that came out of our first responder community from this. However, so many lives were saved by citizens stepping up and being brave in the moment. You had citizens using bike rack barricades as stretchers, getting people out, loading people up into pickup trucks, and driving them to the area hospitals, which can cause a problem, right? So we have a level 1 trauma center in Vegas, the University Medical Center. We have a level 2 trauma center, Sunrise, which is better than nothing, but you don't want to go to Sunrise if you're in Vegas. And then you have 8 or 9 area hospitals. People would just Google what's the closest hospital and take them to. So you have these small hospitals not capable of handling this many victims, getting flooded with people. But citizens stepped up, loading bodies in pickup trucks, because like I said, it's a country concert, driving them to hospitals, saving so many lives. And it kind of was missed in the media talking about it. There's so many stories of bravery from people that aren't trained. Bravery isn't always in a title, right? It's not always in a rank. It's just people stepping up and doing the right thing. There was an officer who's a friend of mine who took a frag to the neck. And he's getting people out. He's working the concert, and he's bleeding, and he's stressed, obviously, at his heart rate, so he's bleeding a lot. And a nurse that was just there at the concert grabbed him and said, and she was off duty, grabbed him, said, "Let me look at this. If you pinch this, it's not the artery, and hold it, you'll be fine." Like, there's so many stories about that. So again, I'm talking to first responders, and I want to educate people about the incident and then how to respond, but I make sure I always mention that because so many lives were saved. And you see this, just kind of an overview. This is very similar to what the suspect would have seen, a similar angle. The bottom of the screen was the stage. And again, you see a lot of people fleeing, a lot of people self-evacuating, trying to get to cover, trying to get to safety. And then you see a lot of people just like freezing, because everybody knows fight or flight, but it's fight or flight or freeze. Deer in the headlights is there for a reason, and I'll talk about that when I get into tactical paralysis. After the shooting started, we had a very large homicide scene. You had the room, every hospital, his vehicle, his house in Mesquite, which is about an hour outside of Las Vegas. The festival grounds itself, which had more than 20 bodies, and then people would run and then fell and died in the street at Las Vegas Boulevard and on Tropicana and by the airport, and then every single hospital where people showed up. So it turned into just a very large investigation that spanned weeks and weeks and weeks afterwards, which also took its toll on our people. So not only the officers that were there, the officers that responded like I did, but you had investigators. We eventually had to release all of our body cam but we had to review every minute of that body camera. So you had teams of officers, all they were doing day in and day out was watching body camera from this incident. And then the officer response. You had chaos, right? What we're talking about, kind of the theme of the first part of this class. A lack of intelligence. Initially, just trying to get your arms around what's going on. And that you're, switching from that working a concert, overtime, easy, to chaos and trying to, like I said, what is actually happening? That feeling of being overwhelmed. And initially a lack of command and control. So one of the lessons that we learned, even though we've been doing this for years, is we put our command post in the middle of the concert grounds in a trailer. There was a lieutenant that was the incident commander. We preset ICS, so we had incident commander and the deputy incident commander and all that. Even for anything over 15,000 people, we'd have that set up where a lieutenant would run. Anything over 40,000, we had a captain out there generally. And however, the lieutenant was out of the command post and walking around. It's 3 days and you're just sitting in a little trailer. And when the shooting started, and he was ineffective. So now we make sure that our command post is outside of the concert grounds, close enough to have an impact, but far enough away to not be in the danger zone, in the hot zone when this is happening. So it took the captain of the area, the Convention Center Area Command, to respond and set up an incident command at South Central area. It's weird. We had there's a different station right next to the Mandalay Bay, which is for a different area that starts at that station and goes south. But the Convention Center Area Command, which is a strip, he went to that station because it was right there, set up a command post and began running operations. But that took about 30 to 40 minutes to get that set up. So again, lessons learned. An overview of the area, you see the Mandalay Bay Hotel. About 400 yards down is the concert grounds. And I put this in there for a couple reasons, just to give you an idea of the gravity and the size, the magnitude of this incident. But also there were people afterwards that, why didn't the officers, get their rifle and shoot back up at the suspect? Well, at the time, we did not have any officers with enhanced optics on their rifles. And not every officer carried a rifle. You have to take a specialized class to do it, to carry a AR. The most you're gonna have on one of those is an aim point. So shooting under fire to a suspect in an elevated position, 400 yards, and if you miss, you're dumping rounds into the Mandalay Bay Hotel. Like, it just wasn't feasible to even expect that. What the agency did after this, their response was we created a special purpose rifle program. We had officers with 1 to 7 magnification optics on ARs that they can be pre-deployed before a large event like this. It possibly could. We also enacted a aerial platform shooting with our tactical team, so a marksman can hop in our helicopter and get to the area and potentially take that shot. But that takes a lot of training and money, and have to have a helicopter, and they have to get to the hangar to do it, or the helicopter, if it's up, can go pick them up, but that still takes time, right? Who is going to have an impact on an active shooter? I'd love to say a tactical team. I'd love to say you're gonna have, tactical officers there, you're gonna have a SWAT team. We had one on my team that was out in the area when the call came and showed up with his gear. And then a second one as we were making entry after the breach. But generally it's gonna be patrol, maybe some detectives, K9 handlers, if you have K9 out. And if you're lucky enough, like as a K9 handler, I was a SWAT dog handler, had all the gear, had trained with our SWAT team, so was able to have a little more functionality, but it's generally gonna be our patrol officers, which again is why this type of training is so important, because it's all about speed and getting there and thinking clear and responding. What to expect as a leader, right? On any incident this size. First off, you're gonna have an influx of information, and not a lot of it's gonna be accurate. It's not necessarily misinformation. We had 51 officers on the field, several sergeants, and a lieutenant. All of them have different perspective of what's going on, and all of them talking on the radio, trying to give what's happening. So you as a leader responding to this, you're gonna be listening to it and trying to figure out what's accurate, what's not accurate, what's actually happening. There's gonna be an overconvergence of resources. Initially, you're not gonna have enough people, and then you're gonna have too many, and that causes problems in and of itself. Broken communication, just trying to get out on the radio. It's not even if your radio system works immaculately, and I don't know what radio systems you guys have out here. If you have dead spots, I would imagine you would. Even driving in from Kansas City, my cell phone died 3 or 4 times. So then on top of that, the human element, the panic on the radio. And then the last, multiple calls into dispatch, creating ghost calls, and we'll talk about each one of these. But the radio will be full of information. In the first 54 minutes of this incident, there was about 600 transmissions on one channel. Now, in Vegas, we are blessed with, we have 3,600 commissioned officers. 10 area commands, roughly each 40 officers working at each area command at a time, and then probably the same amount of detective specialized units out at any time, 24/7. I mean, we're a big agency, 24-hour town. Even with that, and all of us on the same radio, communications is going to be stretched. So if you're a sheriff of a county here and you have a large incident and you have multiple agencies responding to help out, that communication is even going to be worse. And since 9/11, everybody's been banging the drum of interoperability. We all need to be on the same channel. I get that, and to a point, I agree. The problem is as officers, we're not like the fire department. And I like to make fun of our second responders, the firefighters, especially when they're in the class. But one thing they're really good at is communication. You have a rig, and you have one person with like 3 radios, and that's the only person talking on the radio. On this, over 1,000 officers responded to this, and everyone is responding to the scariest call they've ever been on and seeing horror like they've never seen in front of them, and they're saying it on the radio. Because that's how we've been trained, gumming up that radio channel. So 2 channels, actually. You had the Convention Center Area Command and a special events channel that we had designated with a dispatcher for this event. So both of those radio channels had communications on them. And then almost 7,900 911 calls during this incident came in, many of which are from people that didn't live in Las Vegas. So, where are you at? Well, I can see the Luxor light, or I can see the stratosphere, the air units to the left of me and then to the right of me, just making that communication very difficult. And then social media. So this was 2017. The social media presence now in our society is even greater than it was then. I had the displeasure of being the captain over the Strip. I actually really liked that job, but it was 24/7. I mean, I still had the captain job during the day, during banker's hours, where I'm going to meetings and CompStat and all the stuff we had to do. I had 327 cops working for me when I was the captain of the Strip. So I had all that, but Las Vegas, the Strip turns on at night. And that is only the Strip. If you were the captain, you only have that 4.2 mile stretch with 38 resorts, over 47 million people a year visit. So at night, and anything that happens on the Strip is national news. So I was always having to call the sheriff and just handle everything that was happening there. Well, one night, I'm not really allowed to say bum. I'm not trying to get canceled. A person affected by homelessness threw a big rock into a glass door in front of the MGM. This is after this, obviously, and he got tackled. And incident over. Somehow on social media, that started a frenzy that there was an active shooter in front of MGM. That evolved into 4,000 people running down the Strip screaming active shooter, 61 people transported to the hospital from trample injuries, all because of social media. So now even imagine you have an active shooter at a school or at a mall, and you're trying to contain it, and now you have people just showing up because on social media their loved ones are inside. And so it just creates a critical incident in and of itself. So know that social media can be an obstacle on something like this, and getting out ahead of it. What I did on that with the homeless person was had officers at every intersection on the Strip on the PA saying there's not an actual active shooter. And still people were coming up to my officers saying, you're lying, you're covering this up, there's an active shooter, when we knew the incident was over. An overconvergence of resources. So the cops that just show up, dump their car and run in, those are the ones I want there. Those are the meat eaters, those are the guys that I need, guys and gals I need, getting up to that room and taking out the suspect. I just need him to park in a way I can get medical in. I was the incident commander at the UNLV shooting. My first team was inside the door 56 seconds after the first 911 call. Nothing to do with me. I was the captain of the area. The only thing I said on the radio is, officers on scene, put together a team, make your way to the suspect and take him out. That's it. After that, as a captain, I get out of the way. And so they did an amazing job because of their training and because of the guts and bravery that they showed. I arrived as they were engaging the suspect and killing him. The next thing I did, a lieutenant showed up and he said I bruised his chest because I said, I hit him in the chest and I said, I need all these fucking cars moved. I don't care if you have to break windows. Because I know the national average on active shooters, and I've been teaching this specific class when that happened. National average is 40 minutes getting medical in. And we had medical in within 7 minutes because at least in Las Vegas and national standards, FD medical needs 3 things to be able to move forward with a rescue task force. Unified command, identified victims, and declared warm zone. I declared basically the path to where our victims were a warm zone. The first captain that showed up, I'm like, hey, we're unified, let's get in there, and they did. And they stepped up and did what they had to do. And I really am trying not to curse a whole lot when I teach. I've been teaching cops for a long time. So if you have a problem with it, I don't fucking care. The door's back there. I'm retired. It doesn't matter. I mean, I haven't been paid yet, but anyway, so knowing that this can create a problem, and it's a simple problem to solve, just having officers park in that wishbone, but under stress in that moment, it's just not something they're really gonna think about. So knowing that it's something you have to address to get medical in. Here is the secret to any active shooter response. And again, I unfortunately was incident commander at UNLV, incident commander of our mass stabbing on the Strip where 8 people were stabbed, 2 people were killed, and tactical response. There are only 2 things that matter that you will go down in history as having a successful response or a failed response. How fast you kill the suspect, or neutralize the suspect, and how fast you get medical in. Those are the only 2 things that matter. Your command post can be too close, your staging area can be too far, all of those things, it doesn't matter. How quick do you take out the suspect, and how quick do you get medical in? Because those are the 2 things that save lives. Yes, and after action, at the UNLV one, my command post was too close. It was about 300 yards from the building where the shooting was happening. I had 2 staging areas that got set up. I do a whole debrief on that incident, which is about 2 hours long. It's more a tactical debrief than this. But those were some of the critiques of our response. But ultimately, 56 seconds after the first 911 call, my first team's in there, suspect was dropped in 7 minutes for medical. So, and we also breached 255 doors manually because I didn't have keys. So tuition at UNLV went up. I'm glad my kids go to Reno and not UNLV. A lack of verified info, conflicting information. So again, you'll be faced with a lot of information on the onset, and officers are telling you what they're seeing. But like I mentioned, you had one officer saying the shooting's coming from the Mandalay Bay. You have another officer saying, no, those are strobe lights. Officers on scene are hearing gunfire coming from the stage through the speakers because you heard how loud on that video the gunfire was. So again, that conflicting information, that makes it hard to lead, to make those clear decisions. And let's stack upon that, as an incident commander, and there's no shame in it, you're gonna feel a certain level of anxiety. Like I wear an Apple Watch. I track my heart rate, probably too much. When we breached the door on 1 October, and I'll tell my story in a bit, but my heart rate was at 161. My heart rate got up to like 135 at UNLV, and I had been on a lot of these, and I had, as a canine handler, been on critical incident after critical incident, been the incident commander, but still, why? I wasn't in danger, because all eyes are on me. You guys all understand, you're in the fishbowl. You're the one making those decisions. You're gonna make 100 decisions an hour, and each one of those lives could be at stake. So knowing that you're gonna have those emotions, you can use some of the same tools that I'm gonna get into later in this class to mitigate those physiological effects so you can make better decisions. Because we are all human. Doesn't matter your rank, your title, sheriff, undersheriff, chief, deputy chief, captain, lieutenant, it doesn't matter. You're all humans, and you're all built to have these emotions. So another thing that happened was you had 22,000 people all self-evacuate, many of them bleeding and hurt, shot. Again, 413 people shot. Running into surrounding businesses, screaming active shooter. Something I was never prepared for, what happens? All of the surrounding businesses call active shooters on their properties. Ghost calls, echo calls, nothing I even expected. So as I'm responding, I'm now hearing on the radio, active shooter at New York, New York, active shooter at Caesars, active shooter at the airport, which was right next to it because people were running across the tarmac. Several people ended up in Sheldon Adelson's private hangar and drank all the booze out of his airplane because it was a country concert and no charges were ever filed on that. But if you think about it, again, that creates for me what am I hearing on the radio? It feels like Las Vegas is under attack. Because again, not something I was expecting. Now it's happened since then. Even at UNLV, when I was there, and I have been teaching this part of this class. And I have my officers that are in the main building clearing it out. The suspect had just been dropped, neutralized, sorry. And I now get reports that there's a guy with a rifle going into the Thomas and Mack where there's a rodeo going on and everybody's sheltered in place. And I believed that to be a ghost call, probably a responding officer. I only had one call. So I get on the radio. Dispatch, just let me know if you get another call on that. I'm not going to move my resources there because I just didn't have enough to move away from the main building. And I'll tell you, on the inside, I was like, I hope I'm right about that one. So even knowing, and it turned out to be just that. It was a narcotics officer that was running by the Thomas and Mack with his gear to get to the scene. And I'll talk about plainclothes response to this and the risk versus reward on that. But so with that being said, even teaching this and knowing to expect it doesn't make it easy. So this is what we were hearing on the radio that night. Mind you, everything that you're going to hear was not a real call.
North Division, go ahead. Hey, Chief, we're getting reports from bystanders that they saw somebody go into an RV directly across the street from where we're at, wearing fatigues and a black duffel bag.
And 6, be advised, we're getting reports on Mandalay Bay, the top of Mandalay Bay at the bar. We currently have another active shooter up there.
Have reports that there's an active shooter at New York, New York, and shots heard from Hooters.
We have reports of active shooters now at Hakkasan and New York, New York. I have not confirmed that.
Also getting reports that shots are being fired at MGM as well. Shots fired MGM. We now have report of an active shooter at the Tropicana, active shooter at the Tropicana.
Command from North Branch Emergency Traffic. We have people on the roof of the Tropicana, at least 2 people on the roof of the Tropicana.
Emergency traffic, shots fired in the Tropicana. Shots fired in the Tropicana.
Command from North Branch, we're getting people evacuating out of the Excalibur reporting that there's a fire in there. Chief Blackburn's receiving reports of shots fired in the Planet Hollywood, and I see strobes going off inside of the Mandalay. Chief Blackburn just came in here. He's reporting shots fired at Caesars now.
Be advised, we are currently receiving reports of an active shooter at McCarran Airport. Repeat, active shooter at McCarran Airport. And be advised, we're getting reports on the 34th floor of Mandalay Bay. There's been an explosion in the 32nd, 33rd, and 34th floor on fire.
That one was real. That was me.
Command, we just had a backpack show up unattended right where EMS branch is set up at Alibaba and Giles. We're relocating from the area.
Command operations. Also, we're getting reports of hostages being held currently at New York, New York.
Emergency traffic, Force Protection 6 is reporting shots fired at the New York, New York.
Simple, right? And again, even with the resources that we had, we didn't have enough initially at the onset to send people to all of these places. We eventually did send strike teams, and that's how we realized what we actually had. In one of these, at the New York, New York, there was a sergeant and her team inside, and they were saying, there's an active shooter in here, because they were confronted with a victim that was shot, rather than asking a couple of questions. So this is everything that even me as the response team is hearing on the radio, and it's driving action as well. So again, knowing that this is something when you have a crowd, and it doesn't have to be 22,000 people. It can be a mall where people are running into the neighboring Target and Kohl's and all of the places around, and those places call them in as well. So it's not easy for you guys to make those proper decisions. When I talk about that influx of information and everything happening, just expect that. Everybody has in their pocket a supercomputer and a phone, and they can call and report and call their friends and tweet and TikTok and all of that stuff. So this is the reality of responding to a large-scale critical incident in 2025. So what do we do with that chaos, right? When we're confronted with that chaos, we calm it. And this was always kind of a frustration of mine. I remember in field training, in 2000, I have my field training officer telling me, hey, we're going on this call, and when you get there, I need you to slow the momentum and calm things down. I'm like, okay, cool, how do I do that? Just slow the momentum. I'm like, okay, but how? Then he got annoyed with me, so I stopped talking. But how do we calm the things around us? How do we calm internally ourselves? Well, there's a couple things. First off, calm is contagious. Giving direction in a clear and calm voice will calm the people around you. There was at one point, I'm with my team, and we're making our way to the room, and I tell my team, you guys are doing fucking phenomenal. Beers are on me later. That was intentional. I mean, we did go get beers, not that night, but I did take them out for beers. I was a sergeant at the time, but I could just feel the energy of them. I could feel, because I knew how I was feeling, having been to SWAT school on hundreds of missions and critical incident after critical incident, being a K-9 sergeant and a K-9 handler in a large city. And this was by far, not even, second place wasn't even close, the most stressful event I'd ever been on at that point in my career. So I knew. So trying to calm them down, being calm, being, like I said, people will follow that. Citizens will follow that. And another thing too is for ourselves. I had a sergeant when I was a new K-9 handler, and he was all right. He wasn't the hardest worker, but when stuff was going south, had been a combat Marine and was just the calmest human being. I remember I'm running, we had shots fired. I'm running past him with my dog. He's like, "Where are you going?" Like, obviously knowing our role as a K-9 handler and where I needed to be. But he was just so calm. So then when I promoted to sergeant, I just faked it and acted just how I thought Danny would act on any critical incident, until that's just how I was. So what I tell people, especially new officers, if you fake calm, you will eventually be calm under stress. Avoiding multiple officers and multiple leaders giving commands. A leader can affect the people around them. And if you have, a captain and a lieutenant both giving alternating commands, yelling and back and forth, and they are just exuding that nervousness energy, it's going to affect the entire event, everybody on the radio channel, everybody in their sphere of influence. So avoiding that and just, giving that calm, clear direction, but also consistent direction. And like I said, make your way to the suspect and take him out, and getting medical in. Those are the two strategies. And those are the most important things that we can do on those. So every decision we make should be towards those two goals on an active shooter. And you don't think you have to get on and tell your cops, hey, go kill this guy, go neutralize this guy, but you do. Because that freeze that their experiences, especially inexperienced officers, is real. And that can be just the gentle nudge they need to know that, okay, I've never been on this. This looks different than every other call that I've been on where I've been told to stop because this is a barricade. That gentle nudge, go get him, can be all it can take. Developing a plan, even if it's very basic. General Patton said it best. A good plan executed violently is better than a perfect plan executed slowly. Just being clear of mind and to know that this is what we need to do to bring this to a peaceful, or not peaceful resolution, but a resolution. This is what we need to do to get that done. And giving that direction, that can also calm our response. And last, I put this in there kind of as a joke to slow the momentum, but just remember that smooth is fast. How you carry yourself, how your body is, you back to room clearing 101, you're not running through. I know for a time we had that warfighter mentality where we were training for active shooters where you're running, and no, smooth is fast, slow that momentum, continue forward progress, which I'm going to talk about later. Additional considerations, calming that chaos after the fact. So the chaos doesn't just stop because the shooting starts or stops. You have an entire agency reliant on you for their emotional well-being. So the CISMs, the critical incident stress management process, peer support. Peer support, when done correctly, is a conduit for resources to people that need it. Identifying what officers are in crisis. One of the things that we had is everybody wanted to help. Las Vegas came together. People say Las Vegas doesn't have a community. 3 million people live in Las Vegas. Most of those people are not even anywhere near the Strip. So everybody wanted to help, donate blood. People were donating like pallets of water and Gatorade at every station. Food, plates of food, local restaurants. For some reason, breakfast burritos were the things that people were donating. I probably ate 8 of them that week, and my dog had like 4. But what do you do with all that, right? It's just going to go bad. So we ended up donating a lot to like shelters and rape crisis center and stuff in the area. The national news versus the local news. The national news on anything of significance will never be your friend. As a police leader, they will come in, they want to run their own concurrent investigation, they have the resources and experience to do it. They are not on your side. Local media, however, can be. If you've worked to establish a good relationship with them, the coolest thing our at the time sheriff, Joe Lombardo, who's now the governor of Nevada, did, he did hourly news briefs for like 48 hours. And one of the things he did is when he did those news briefs, the first 2 rows were all local media, and national media had to sit in the back. And he made sure he took the local media questions first. And I just thought that was super cool. And it also brought a lot of credibility with him with the local media the rest of his term, and the term after that. And then the last thing, body camera will be released. And after this incident, our agency tried to release, like my body camera was released the following May. Mine was the first to be released, and it was, that was stressful, to be honest. I'll tell you, like, I didn't watch my body camera before my interviews with all the investigators because I remembered what happened, but before it was released to the media, it was. And I only cursed a couple times, surprisingly. I was, what I was saying was pretty robotic, but that was stressful. The worst 2 hours of my life, all 2 hours were given to the media. It was on CNN, it was international news. And for me, like, I was stressed because there was at one point, so when we made entry initially into the casino, they build those things so you don't know what's going on outside, so people keep gambling. We made entry into the casino, people were still drinking and gambling, even though there was horror going on outside. So people were reacting to us. And a lady saw me and turned and she was, dressed as they do in Vegas at times, and saw me, screamed, turned and ran, and completely ate shit in front of me. And I go, which, I'm under stress, and you're trying to like mitigate that stress internally, whatever at the time, but 5 months later, that I'm afraid that's gonna, and I remembered that, and I'm watching for that moment on my body camera, not anything I did, because I'm like, they're gonna think I'm this huge callous asshole when 58 people are dead outside and I'm laughing inside. But that's just, we all know how stress is and how we process stress in the moment. We had one officer, while he was en route, call his wife and said he loved her, then hung up and called his girlfriend and said he loved her. So when all the body camera got released, because we got sued and had to release all of the body camera, that body camera's out there floating around. Yeah, busted. But because what eventually happened is the media sued us and we had to release it all. So when we had to release it all, we had to review everything to redact certain things. But yeah, how stressed is that cop? It's probably still. Because I don't know, I'm sure it's out there on YouTube somewhere. And one of the things that I really like that Nashville does, because they are really good at not only officer wellness, but they have a lot of active shooters in Nashville, and they always have good responses. And I think I like to equate that, and this is anecdotal, to how they take care of the mental health of their officers as well. But one of the things they do on their, they had that school shooting and recently, and if you watch the video, it's super, like, those officers did an amazing job going with the rifle, take out the suspect, but they set up a separate command post during the incident. Their peer support sets up a command post while the incident's happening and works on identifying what officers did what, and then what resources they need. It's basically triaging resources, because no matter the size of your agency, like in Las Vegas Metro, we have a wellness bureau that I helped set up when I was a captain, and I was put in charge of it to create it. We still don't have enough for the 6,000 employees on Las Vegas Metro. So no matter the size of your agency, you're going to have a limited number of resources on a large-scale event to get to people. So triaging who needs those resources the most. Something as simple as this could save a life, plain and simple. And you guys know what I'm talking about. And then also, don't forget those roles. We forget the leadership positions, but it takes its toll as well. So it's 9:16. Let's be back at 9:25, and we'll keep going.